LeGrant Taylor is a native of Anger, North Carolina, where he spent his early years growing up in an underprivileged neighborhood. LeGrant is a self-taught artist who uses oil on canvas to paint from the soul's eye. He describes his style as a unique blend of several different styles. I sat down with LeGrant to hear a unique perspective on his life and his art.
Okay, inspiration was developed. It was in the beginning of my painting career. I had an accident, and which butted my painting career. I got in a car accident, and I was sitting in a chair. Back was hurting, and I had back injuries from the accident. And the good Lord spoke to me. He said, "Go get a canvas, and go get some paint, and start painting." And of course I was like, what is this speaking to me, you know? And so when I was out, I had gone to a doctor's appointment. I stopped by the paint store and I picked up some paint and picked up a canvas. And I came back and I got me a camera tripod and taped the canvas to the tripod and started painting.
So how old were you when all this occurred?
I was 40 years old.
So you did not start painting professionally until you were 40?
Till 40, yes.
Wow. And I think you maybe had one art class in your life?
One art class in junior high school, which was in the 8th grade, up under the leadership of Robert Dunning. And took another class in 9th grade under Susan Warlick, and that was at North Garner Middle School. And never oil painted day in my life until I had actually did a oil painting when I was a kid, paint by numbers, and I just was afraid of oil painting because I didn't like the way to paint. When you paint by numbers, you're basically painting in little blocks and that's it. And I wanted to see more of the definition and the blending and how you get depth with the shadows. And so started, and it started to develop.
And so this inspiration picture actually has a sequel to it, let's say, called Kissable. Tell us about that kissable part that draws the audience in.
Through my art, I try to basically bring the viewer into the actual painting. And the lips kind of seals the deal on the inspirational piece. That's like the inspiration was kind of like, you know, you get this inspiration and where does it come from and what does it take you to? Well, the inspiration, of course, came from God. It is definitely a gift. And so the Kissable kind of seals the deal, and it's a sequel painting. But the top piece was probably done the inspiration was probably done in about a month, and the Kissable was probably done in a week.
Wow. Incredible. So when you are painting and you say the inspiration is coming from God, I'm interested in knowing, did that pain that you were experiencing go away?
No.
So you had to paint through the pain?
I had to work through the pain. Actually, while I was actually painting, I had a hard time getting comfortable. And so with when I started on the painting, I was able to get the concentration of the paint off. I would get in different positions, and I went through a lot of therapy. And eventually the pain did subside. Every now and then I still have some pains, but the paintings do help me to defer the pain.
One of my favorite paintings of yours is called No Looking Back. K-N-O-W, No Looking Back. And when I was going over your biography, I saw where you attended Shawan College, now Shawan University in Murfreesboro. And I'm from that general area. So this painting reminds me of home, and it looks like a dirt road, very rural area. Tell us about the scripture that goes along with this painting. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So is that what this painting is saying?
Yes. No Looking Back, it's a timeless piece. There's nothing in there to put a focus on time. Everybody's there. Your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your younger cousin, your older cousin.
And that's what I was going to say. The people in the picture, I don't even want to call them characters because they look like people that we might know. And they remind me of people that were in my church, for instance, that I grew up with. And those were endearing people. And that's what it gives a very warm feeling to that picture.
It is. And it's about the knowledge of the past. It takes you back to things that I always use the scenario of the hot stove scenario. No Looking Back can be taken two different ways. It can you go through some bad things, you go through some good things. The bad things, if you don't learn anything good out of the bad things, then you missed it. And so that's what it's all about. It's about the hot iron theory. You touch it, you get burned, you go back. Do you touch it again? I don't think so.
Hopefully not, right?
So, but we all have gone through some bad things in our past. We've gone through some good things. I find that the elderly people look at it and they can really reflect back on the different things we've gone through down the road. Civil rights movement is what I really look at a lot of it, slavery. But also I get folks of other nationalities that look at it and they can see something within that painting that draws them into it, and they feel like they're right there, and I've been there, and I've gone here, and I've done this, and I can move on now, which is the big purpose of No Looking Back. Well, the reason why that piece is not signed is because the drum major is still evolving. It's been one of my hardest paintings. I started getting into the drum major and I was like, oh man, this is just wonderful. And the drum major is the Helping Hand Mission guy that comes down in the parade. And
yeah, because I thought it was A&T at first.
I get it all the time. And so this guy, he's a drum major and he's doing his thing, and I notice every year in the Dollar Christmas Parade, the Helping Hand Mission guy comes by and he's drawing the crowd and everything's falling. And one thing that has always intrigued me about the drum major is what Martin Luther King Jr. said about be a drum major for something. Tell him I was a drum major for justice.
Yes.
And so as you look at this piece, there's no people in back of him. So as he's walking down and he's doing his drum major, whatever you are, you're a drum major for something.
Right.
And so as he's walking, he's drawing these people into his calling. Mm-hmm. And he's spreading a little bit of this, spreading a little bit of that. And so it trickles into their soul. Yeah. And they have that with them that they have to carry in, which I guess goes back to wisdom.
Yes, definitely. Well, that cape on this particular painting grabs my attention first. Was it designed to do that? Because
yes.
That's the first thing I started concentrating on.
It is.
And then as we looked deeper into the picture, then I started to recognize, okay, this isn't a parade. We're not at a football game. Something else going on here.
Something else going on.
That's one of the things that seems to stand out in a number of your paintings that at first, when I look at it, it seems like the obvious comes out, and then there's so much more behind it. So it's really wonderful to be able to have you talk to us about what's actually going on. Now, can we talk about your signature? On
yes,
different ones of these,
course.
I see script, and on some of them, it looks like it was just printed, handwritten, just printed. So tell us about the evolution of your signature.
Well, I started out with the signature, and it just started bothering me, and I was like, people are not going to recognize the signature, and they're not going to be able to read it. And then as time goes on, I said, well, I'll start scripting it. And so I started printing it. So I printed it, and I liked it, and it just started wearing on me. And someone brought it to my attention. They pulled me to the side and they said, I want to ask you about your signature. And I was like, okay. She's like, why do you have some of them printed, some of them script? I said, well, I've been battling this fight about what I wanted to stick with, what I wanted to put as my stamp. And so we talked about it, and she said, well, I'm not, she didn't want to, she wasn't imposing, but she said, there's something to think about because that is something that you want to actually have as your stamp. And I said, I know you're right. And so I went back home and I thought about it. And so I ended up going with the script. And so from that day forward, all of my paintings will be signed with script. There's only very few of them with the printed.
Well, those will definitely be collector's items, the ones that are printed. One of these paintings looks a lot different from all the others. The name of it is Shout.
Shout.
Now, tell me what's behind the Shout picture.
I got up one morning and I had this pain in my chest. And I reached over to turn off my alarm clock, and something said, take your hand back. And so I took my hand back, and so I slowly did it again, and I felt this sharp pain in my chest, and I told my wife, I think I'm having a heart attack. Well, got up and went into my bathroom, and I leaned over my sink, and I told her, I said, I got a pain in my chest, and I think I'm having a heart attack. And so she said, go back and get in the bed, and I'll be right out. She was in the shower. And so I got ready to sit down on the tub, and whenever I did, I blanked out. The guy at the emergency room asked me if I had ever heard of sarcoid. And I'm like, no, what's sarcoid? And he says, well, you need to go and see a pulmonary guy and all this stuff. And I says, okay. So go see the pulmonary guy. They do a bronchoscopy, and they go down and they get a piece of meat of your lung, and they diagnose it and see what's wrong. So in the process of all this happening, we're waiting for the results. I'm in church, and I'm sitting there, and the Lord speaks to me, and he says, you don't have cancer. And I said, okay, because that's where everything was going, was leading to cancer. And he said, you don't have cancer. And so I went into a shout. And so the shout, as you notice, if you look at the shout, there's a person praying.
Yes.
And then you have a rise of the shout. It comes out in the middle, and it's like the explosion of the shout. And it starts with the colors, give the intensities of the shout. And so you have some people that go into very mild shouts, and some that go into very hard shouts. And the shout shout represents the diagnosis that I got, which was sarcoidosis, which is not the greatest thing in the world, but it may be better than cancer. So they say it's the best of the two evils. As a child, I was born with a birth defect. I was blind in my left eye. I can see light, and it's like I can't recognize anything. It's just I see maybe movement. It looks like somebody put some grease over a glass and just smashed it right in my eyes. What it looks like. It's nothing that I can identify. So I've often wondered about it, why I had it, and I couldn't play sports, and they took me out of sports, and they said you can't do this, you can't do that because of your blindness, which left me to say, okay, so you're handicapped. Okay, so I'm handicapped. But that doesn't stop the train from going. And so I think that from that gift, I can see a lot of detail that is there, and I think that's God's gift. I think that He put that in me to be able to go and see the deepest dark point of the shadow, the lightest point of where where the light hits the object and bounces off. And if I had to say anything to anybody who was inspiring to paint, I would say, don't paint the picture, paint the detail.
Wow.
Because the detail is where the picture is.
Right.
Objects have shapes and sides, but light shows the beginning and the end.
That's actually one of the things that stands out to me about a number of your paintings is the way that the light plays off of the detail.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that it's actually what one might term a disability is what helps to highlight that particular part of your paintings.
Yeah.
So what do you love most about being an artist?
The thing I love most about being an artist is being able to have my boundaries. I can set my boundaries. I can get deep into the pictures and how can I say it? At this point, I've come to a statement that my paintings are sermons on canvas.
Wow.
So I want them to be able to preach to you and be able to say something to you to make you be able to feel and be in the moment and be able to feel like you were there and that it's actually part of you. So whenever I'm painting, I try not to paint something that would be obscene.
Right.
I want
because that would draw the audience in as well.
That's right. I want the 2-year-old to come up and say, "Hey, mommy, I like this painting,"
Right.
and I want the 99 to 105-year-old to come in and say, "I like this painting." So those are the people that I want to create. Or bring into my paintings, and I want them to be from that age level on down.
It appears that you've had to go through many storms even to continue painting. What about this? Isn't this painting called The Storm?
And the storm is about going through anything you go through in life, it's a storm. Either you're going in a storm or you're coming out of a storm.
True.
And that's what this one speaks about. It's a helpmeet for a lot of people with. My focus on this one was probably breast cancer, and I featured the ladies in there. But my focus on it was trials and tribulations, and different things people have to go through. You got to go through that storm. You cannot stop in the middle of it and get off of this and break away. You got to go through it. And the results, the end results, are amazing because it's your testimony.
Absolutely. What impact do you think technology has had on visual art creativity?
Oh my goodness, I'm glad you asked that question.
Because that's kind of where things are going.
Yeah. That's a fight with me on the side of selling. That's one reason why I try to paint things that I feel like everybody would want to see and somebody want to be a part of. I think that people are getting away from printing and they're going digital,
Right.
which makes it real simple to capture and steal and bootleg and do all kinds of things with paintings. It kind of disturbs me because I'm a printer by trade, so I actually can press my own artwork, some of it not to a certain size, but I have one piece that I've pressed, which is the No Looking Back piece, which was the first piece, which is what I call a true work of art from beginning to all the way out of the press. So I actually printed my first piece. But I think that the printing industry is really getting hurt by the digital tools that they have out there now. Although you can get high-end Z-Clays printings of your high-definition prints of your originals.
And is that what Z-Clay is?
Z-Clays are a type of printing that is the closest they have of a reproduction of your original.
I see. And you have one here.
Yes.
This beach scene.
Yes, the beach scene, A Day at the Beach, and also the piece that's on display that you'll see today is also a Z-Clay. Well, I think my price range is probably around $1,500 for an original on up to the front pew, which is I would consider the masterpiece of the masterpieces.
And that's this one right here.
Yeah, that's the one we're working on right now. And the front pew could probably, if someone gave me $8,500 for it, I'd probably cry like a baby. This is going in my home.
Now, one thing you told me about that front pew painting is that you actually took several different pictures.
Yeah. It's a conglomeration. It's a conglomeration of about 50 different photographs. I work on the sound ministry at church, and I take photographs of everything that's going on and everything. And so this picture got inspired. I see what's going on, and it's like, you see all these people having a great time, and it's like, where do you go from there? And it's like, me as an artist, I have to put this out there and show where people are having a good time in church, and they're going for their callings, and to reach out the ministries in the church, to reach out to the world and bring them in so they can learn about the goodness of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Ivy Hayes is one of the guys that is giving me some good inspiration right now. I looked at his stuff, and I'm anxious he just passed away, but his work is so lively, and I think that his passion, the way he felt his passion, is kind of like the way I feel my passion. He really loved to paint, and if you know the story of Ivy, or if you don't know the story of Ivy, he got arthritis in his right hand so bad he couldn't paint, so he learned how to paint with his left hand.
Wow.
So that is so inspirational to me, that he had the passion. God was speaking to him. He had to do it. He had no other choice.
So I have a philosophical question for you.
Okay.
Does art imitate life? Does life imitate art, or does it go around in a circle?
I think art imitates life. I think it does go in a circle, but I think art imitates life. You have to give life to the canvas. And if the canvas don't speak to you, it's not art to me. I mean, I have to, whenever I walk up and I look at other people's art, I get inspired by works of Ernie Barnes. I get inspired by works of Larry Poncho Brown, Kevin White Williams. These guys have, whenever I see some of the things that they're doing, it amazes me.
Now, there may be some young or even older, since you started when you were 40, some people who may want to paint. What would you give them as a piece of advice?
The best piece of advice I can give them is to paint the detail. Stay with the detail. You can look at the figures and you can try to draw the figures and all that, but when it gets down and dirty to it, it's the details of making you got a place, and if you draw it and it's flat, the only way to make it live is to put some detail in it. and to go in and get the detail and pull it out, and it makes the eyes sink into the canvas and make the eyes pull out, and the noses pop off of the canvas, and the wrinkles in the clothes, and all that's detail. It's the expressions. The expressions are not necessarily just the eyes, but it's the way that the eyes, the details of the way that the eyes are actually looking at things.
What about your paintings as far as being able to obtain one of them, to own one of them? Where's your artwork on display?
Right now, I have some artwork on display at Exotique. I'll be doing shows round and about. You can reach me on my website at legrandtaylor.com. And on there you have information how to contact me, and we can talk about the pieces, or we can just eclay. I also have prints of my pieces, cards, and just different promotionals on them.